안녕하세요. 아틀란타인 여러분. 부동산 전문인 잔희정입니다. 2020년 11월 월간 시장 보고서에 오신 것을 환영합니다. 벌써 이번 달에 많은 일들이 일어났었습니다. 지금 미국 대선으로 인해 많은 일들이 일어나고 있지만 미국 부동산 시장에서도 마찬가지로 많은 일들이 일어나고 있습니다. 오늘 제가 많은 정보를 다룰 건데요. 오늘 부동산 정보가 매우 유익하고 여러분께 많은 도움이 될 것이라 생각합니다. 자, 그럼 시작하겠습니다. The first point I want to cover before we go anywhere is, if you remember my market report back in April, as I've discussed about experts projecting economic downturn starting in the first quarter and quickly bouncing back after hitting the bottom in the second quarter. I bring this up because I want to show you what has actually happened since the advanced estimate of GDP for the third quarter has been announced recently. And what actually happened is what the experts had projected, just like what I've mentioned back in April. You could almost lay one on top of each other and it would look identical. Now, of course, there are still lots of questions in the market. We definitely live in the uncertain world with many uncertainties. But I want to help by guiding potential buyers and sellers gain certainties by me purveying what the experts have said, based on the facts and data. In other words, science. So that they can make powerful and competent decisions for them and their families in regards to housing. I say this because news reports and headlines today are sometimes quite misleading in comparison to true facts. This is what Josh Zumbrun at Wall Street Journal said. News stories often describe the COVID-induced global economic downturn as the worst since the Great Depression. Yet for many, the comparison does more to terrify than clarify. And I am here to bring that clarity to you today, and I hope what I'm about to cover will shed some light to whatever real estate questions you had. So let's start by covering what happened during the summer months. During the summer, the average FICO score has actually rose for this country. This is quite surprising, isn't it? Now, these are not people that are in the process of applying for a mortgage. I'm saying these are average consumers. So what caused this to happen? There's a very specific reason for this. It's because most households have used their stimulus check to either pay down their debt or to save. If you look at this chart, 35% of the people used their check to pay down their debt or to pay off the debt. And 36% decided to save that money, and the remaining 29% decided to spend it. So almost 2 out of 3 people used the check to either pay their debt or to save, thereby improving their financial situation and raising their FICO score, giving them a better situation going forward. Now let's talk about unemployment numbers and see where we are. This is Bureau of Labor Statistics weekly filing for unemployment since the late March. As you can see, the highest numbers we saw was at the end of March at almost 7 million people in 1 week claiming unemployment, and most recently, about 750,000 claimed in a week. So we see that it was around this number for the last several weeks, and we certainly would like to see this number come down. But what's interesting about this is that as people are continuing to file for unemployment, so too are people getting their jobs back and coming off of unemployment. Let's also look at those currently receiving unemployment insurance. The highest numbers at almost 25 million was recorded in May, but that number has been dropping steadily, and recently about 500,000 people dropped off, coming to the number at 7.3 million. Certainly, 7.3 million is still a large number, but it's not 25 million. As our economy continues to make that V-shaped recovery, we expect to see that number come down even further. But how is this large numbers of unemployment going to affect the housing market? This seems to be the ongoing question in my line of business at this time. Are we going to see 2021 housing crisis, foreclosure crisis, housing crash, and so on? Because there are too many misinformations on YouTube, Facebook groups, articles, and blogs. And I want to attack that directly today and give you some information based on facts and data. So let's look at the latest active forbearance. I've been following this for a while. If we go back to May, just over 4.7 million people had active forbearance. This number is actually a little higher than those that have actually taken it. I'll explain this in a minute. But as we look over time, you can see that the numbers of people in active forbearance has been decreasing and have quite dramatically decreased in October. Almost seems to look like a step down to 3 million for the last several weeks. Now, if you remember, the CFPB gave options for people as their first term, first 180 days of forbearance expire. And after, they could either extend or they could do numbers of other things. But overall, the good news is that we're seeing lots of people coming off the forbearance program. When forbearance program was first initiated, many experts had thought that about 30% of the homeowners would take this program, but that never happened. We reached highest percentage at 8.5% in May, and right now we have 5.8% mortgages in forbearance. And of course, this number is dropping. What we also know as well is the percentage of forbearance by product type is also decreasing. Here, you can see Fannie, Freddie, Ginnie, and private mortgages are all dropping. Now, just because we see these mortgages starting to come up for forbearance is not the complete answer to whether we're going to see a housing crash or not, because there are lots of people that are affected by this. Now, let's look at this chart in detail. Please note that these numbers are as of October 20th. Of the 5.7 million families granted forbearance, this is what happened on the expiration of the plan. If we look from the left, the orange bar represents 2.4 million people who extended their forbearance program. Like I mentioned before, the CFPB built in a provision for an extension, and that extension is 180 additional days. So initial 180 days and extension of 180 days, making the forbearance total of 360 days on your mortgage. And 2.4 million said they will extend it. The next two, blue and green bars, which make up 44% of the people who had originally opted in for the program, eventually removed the program and started to perform on their mortgages, or decided to just pay off their mortgages, as you see 500,000 represented on the green bar. Now these 500,000, we don't know how many percent of these people decided to sell their home and move on, but certainly it was paid off. The gray bar indicating 481,000 people expired while delinquent and are in some form of loss mitigation, which is basically they are in the process of working things out with their lender, tacking these payments on the end or doing things that help them survive this. And these are all good things. The last bar representing 80,000 people are the ones that expired while delinquent and are not in some form of loss mitigation. These are the ones that are susceptible to some type of distress sale or foreclosure. I'm hoping these don't turn into that, but these are the ones that could turn into that. And we have to continue to keep our eyes on this number to see what will happen, but the bottom line is that this is not the lion's share, or the majority. It's not a significant number of those that opt in for forbearance. Now, the big difference with current situation compared to 2008 is today, people have many options. The high equity in their homes give the homeowners options to be able to sell, or to be able to do whatever they want. This is very, very different scenario compared to 2008. And this is how Ivy Zelman puts it. The likelihood of us having a foreclosure crisis again is about 0%. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying we're not going to see foreclosure impact, because there will be foreclosures coming into the market, but it's not going to be a crisis level impact. We're not about to see a flood of distressed properties in the market. Now, let's move on to current inventory. The biggest frustration that the buyers face today is no doubt lack of inventory. This graph here represents last 12 months of inventory across the country. And as you see, the inventory situation doesn't seem to be getting better. Most recently, we had 2.7 months of inventory across the country, and as we move into the winter months, we know that we're going to face deficit of inventory across the country. If we also look at this year-over-year change in listings, it's basically the supply of homes coming into the market in green versus the inventory of homes in the market in orange. And as the new supply comes into the market, it's getting purchased as fast or faster than it comes into the market, therefore leaving the total inventory number flat. This phenomenon is creating severely low inventory across the country today. So we understand that there is huge demand for buyers to purchase. But how about the sellers? Why are some of the sellers hesitant to sell right now? Now, if you're hesitant because of the uncertainties that we currently face, waiting might not be a good idea, because this is what Jeff Tucker at Zillow said. Homeowners who feel life is uncertain right now may think they can still get a strong price if they delay selling until they have more clarity. The catch is that waiting to sell may raise the cost of a trade-up. This fall's record low mortgage rates, which make a trade-up more affordable on a monthly basis, are not guaranteed to last. This is true because MBA has recently come up with the projected mortgage rates for the next few years. If you look at this graph, next year the rates are expected to rise to 3.3 and the following year to 3.6. Now 3.3 and 3.6 is still a good rate, but compared to what we're used to this year, it doesn't seem very low. Of course, no one knows what will happen in the future for sure, but as the economy improves, we all know that the rates will eventually go up. And how about home prices? I've mentioned this before, but as you see in this chart, the appreciation seems very positive. All these experts are agreeing on appreciation to some degree, some projecting as high as 6 and 7% going into next year. So going back to being hesitant to sell because of uncertainty, there's very high probability that you will end up buying that new house at a higher price and a higher rate. Well, this is all I have to cover today, and I hope I brought some clarity to you. All in all, our economy is getting better, but we still have COVID to deal with. And it seems as we approach the colder months ahead, the cases are on the rise. I hope you're taking all the necessary precautions to being safe, and please stay healthy. See you next time. Goodbye.